There are 3 LinkedIn post types that made me over 1.1 million in under 2 years without any ads and without any cold DMs either. And it's not just me, this has worked for over 300 of my clients as well. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why your posts are quietly costing you money and how to fix it. So when it comes to content or marketing as a whole, everything that you do, every action that you take should fall into one of these 3 buckets, okay? Capture, trust, or convert. So the aim of the capture element is to bring new attention in to your ecosystem, or the funnel, or the diagram, or the flywheel, or whatever the hell you want to call it. It's all the same shit. People just give it different names. So we want to capture new attention, and there are different ways we can do that. Obviously, I'm just going to be looking at this through a content lens, but that is the aim. People can't progress to buying from us or becoming a lead towards the bottom of the funnel if they don't know who we are, if we haven't got their attention. The second element inside the funnel is trust, all right? Once we have their attention, we want to show them that we are credible, that we're likable, and we can actually help in some form. Now, there will be a lot of people in your audience that currently sit here. Now, they're not on the fence. They're not close enough to buying from you. They just need more proof that you can actually help them with whatever it is you do. Then the final stage is convert. All right. And that is taking those people who are on the fence or might be close to the fence and just nudging them over. And there are different types of actions, and more importantly for this video, different types of content that you can put in front of people to advance their journey and advance the speed at which their journey takes place through these 3 stages. Now, the problem that I see happening in content and across LinkedIn is the fact that most people forget about the most important part of this journey. All right. We see everyone trying to get eyeballs and go viral. All right. They're just trying to get the reach and they're always showing off about the reach. Alternatively, we get people, and we all know someone like this or a bunch of people like this who are just trying to sell. All they ever do is talk about the business and how they can help people and the fact that they should book a call right now. The thing that they're missing out on is this middle piece. All right. The middle of the funnel. As I like to call it, the trust part of the funnel. So I'm not trying to negate the importance of capture content or conversion content. However, converting people becomes a lot easier when you spend most of your time in the middle of the funnel building that trust. And we're going to talk about each of these 3 things in detail now. So the first thing, as we kind of said, is capture content. All right. How do we capture new eyeballs? Because it's all well and good just sending content out to our existing audience, but how to create something that has bigger reach? AKA, how can we create something that has the potential to go viral? And I don't profess to be a master at this. I actually tried to not go viral with a lot of my posts. Reason being is it just brings in loads of unwanted attention. But if you ever wanted to do it, this is how I would kind of focus on it, okay? I would try and put out a universal topic, and I'll give some examples in a second. Things that people massively relate to, things that are current or trending, or things that people get pissy about and have an opinion on. And then I will couple it with your opinion. And not only your opinion, but your strong opinion. Okay. So something that people know and that people have an opinion on right now that you also have a mighty strong opinion on as well. So when I have cooked up posts that have got maximum attention and been exposed to new eyeballs, it's typically been around things like kids having phones or swearing. All right. You might want to go into, I mean, I personally stay away from these, but religion or politics, all right? Because people have very, very strong opinions on those things. Now, it could be toxicity. It could be something to do with the gender pay gap. I mean, you're probably coming up with a few ideas already inside your head. It could be music or just news or an icon or a scandal, something like that, all right? Now, you will only want to speak about specific things. So as I mentioned, I'm not really going to talk about the gender pay gap. I have a couple of times. I don't really mention music. I don't really mention the news. And there are a few other things that I draw on. Productivity, like outdated advice, okay, toxic things. It could just be something like social commentary as well, works quite well, and things like that, all right? Now, this is all well and good. You just talk about kids having phones, but actually you want to have a strong opinion which either goes left or goes right, depending on what you think about this particular thing. Yeah. So the way that I look at that is through extremes. So if we look at polar opposites of things, hate or love, best or worst, fastest or slowest. All right. You might agree or disagree, that kind of thing. And once you cook up content like this, it is going to provoke a reaction. When it provokes enough of a reaction, the algorithm of whatever platform you're on, not just LinkedIn, will push it out to more people. All right. So if people are going to agree or disagree and they're going to let you know about it, that reinforces the fact that this is valuable content that people want to see, and the algorithm of that particular platform will reward you with more reach to a wider audience. And that's when you really start to attract some fucking weirdos. But anyway, you can draw the line wherever you want with this kind of thing. Like, you might not want to talk about swearing, so you just cross it off, all right? Again, I don't talk about religion or politics. However, let me give you a couple of examples of how this has worked for me recently, just in the past couple of weeks. So what I've done is brought up my top 3 highest performing posts based on impressions, so the number of eyeballs they've been exposed to from the end of May to the end of June, okay, 2025. I'll go into a bit more detail here, but first and foremost, we can see I'm talking about a hand tattoo, all right? Now, people get really, really pissy about tattoos, really pissy, and that's what I'll talk about in the post. The next thing I've done, okay, is talk about McDonald's and Coca-Cola. I've actually got a relevant image of me talking about them as well there. And then I'm talking about a low point in employment. Now, hopefully, just by pointing these things out, you can see that these are things that everyone can identify with, all right? Everyone has an opinion on tattoos, good or bad. Everyone has an opinion on McDonald's, good or bad. And everyone, there or thereabouts, has had a shit job, all right? So these are just topics. Now, I'm not going to go into breaking each of the posts down, but you can see this one went massive, for me anyway, and it got, 250,000 impressions, just over. Now, the reason that this post went big isn't because I was just talking about tattoos or the fact I'd had a tattoo. It was the fact that I was talking about giving a middle finger to my old boss in the nicest possible way. Because I was told that I wasn't allowed to have a tattoo if I wanted to progress at the company. So I talked about that, and funnily enough, that brought out a really big reaction. And when it got the reaction, the platform rewarded me with more eyeballs, and therefore it went to even more eyeballs, and more people had an opinion that they wanted to chuck in the mix. I talked about McDonald's. Funnily enough, it was actually more in tune with the fact that I was talking about McDonald's systems. But anyway, so we've got employment is a massive thing. We talk about career, obviously, especially on LinkedIn. It's a career platform. So anything in reference to bad situations in employment will work very, very well. But, scrolling back up to this, it could be absolutely anything. So just to talk about this a little bit more before we move on to the next point is any subject, okay? A universal topic that anyone or the majority of the world can identify with, and then your opinion coupled with it will create what I call capture content, which in turn is going to be shown to more people. If you want a planner for this content, which categorizes things into capture, trust, and convert, then I'll put the link below to my high performance LinkedIn planner. All right. And what that does is help you systemize everything using a big old Notion template, and it allows you to save hours. Seriously, talking hours. If you want it, it's free. You can grab it below. Now, I don't really waste time or that much time on capture content because I'm all about the middle of the funnel, pretty much, there or thereabouts. And that is the trust content. So this is pushing out content to people who already know you. All right. You already have their eyeballs. You just need to increase that level of trust. So there are 2 ways in which I like to do this. And that is through heart content and head content. Because you can build trust in 2 different ways. You can build it emotionally, or you can build it logically. All right. So when I look at this type of content, there are 2 ways that I think about it. We have this logical content that makes people think something. And then we have this emotional content which makes them feel something. And these are really, really important things to consider. If you think of it like 2 sides of the brain, all right? The logical side of the brain is very interested in numbers. And does this make sense on paper? Am I going to get an ROI? Show me the processes. So the methodology, the processes that you take your clients through. Perhaps it could be that they want social proof as well. So I feel good about this. The emotions are high, but I need to logically justify it with something. So does it make sense for me to continue either reading or downloading something or buying or whatever it is? All right. This brain, or this part of the brain, I should say, just wants information. You can talk about your product here as well. So logical content would be things like how I saved my client 50K in tax, or effective budgeting for law firms, or the top 5 XYZ tools I use as a whatever your profession is. That type of content is stacked from a logical perspective. But if we look at the right side, the emotional content, this isn't about proving how good we are. This is pretty much just making people like us, all right? So this side is more based around storytelling, all right, and making people feel good. It could be your personal life. It could be some behind the scenes of the business. So it's not all just tied to the metrics and the figures and the stuff like that. It's actually more based around the feeling. Examples might be how my client now takes Mondays off, how my client bought their first house. This was the worst day of my life. I hated my boss, so I did this. Here's how I juggled kids and work. My mum's a superhero. That kind of stuff. And if we go back to our original sort of funnel flywheel journey diagram, we can attribute know, like, and trust to these things, okay? Everyone always talks about it. Know, like, trust. If you haven't heard of that, people can't trust us, usually, unless they like us. And it's impossible for them to like us unless they know us. So first, they have to discover who we are. Then, we want to get them to like us. Then, if they like us, typically, they will trust us. Now, this can go the other way around, but you will never get anywhere further down the journey if you don't get them to know who you are first. So let's say we've got someone who has been following us for a few weeks, or maybe a couple of months. We've captured their attention with something. Again, it doesn't just have to be content. It could be another action that you've taken. You might have spoken on a stage somewhere. Arguably, that's content. You might have sent them a connection request or a cold DM, whatever. Okay. But we've captured their attention, and then we've exposed them to enough content and other touch points where they now trust us. That's amazing. But just trusting us and sitting in the middle of a funnel isn't actually good enough. So what we now want to focus on is how we can convert that person either into a lead or into a client. And the way that we do that, again, is split into two. Firstly, we can just make a direct offer kind of post, all right? Very conversion heavy. And that would typically look along the lines of, I helped so-and-so do this. Do you want to do it? Or I've got space available, or calendar is closing, or doors shutting. Now, a lot of the time, these posts will have urgency injected into them, i.e. there will be some form of timeline available. Not always, but you want to give people an anchor for when they need to take action by. Not always the case, but typically I've found that works the best. Typically for us, whenever we do a price rise, one coming soon, whenever we do a price rise, we will always stick out a few offer posts, and they always convert into leads or calls booked or incoming DMs in some description. Now, the most interesting part about conversion content is it tends to be very logical. You can have some emotionally charged, emotionally driven type stuff, but what I like to do is try and attack the logic first and foremost, because we already have trust built logically and emotionally in the middle of the funnel. It just makes sense to put a logical argument in front of people. And I like to do that through MQO content. Now, you probably haven't heard of MQO content because I've only just come up with it, but essentially it's misconceptions, questions, I'm not writing all these out, and objections, all right? These are the reasons that people will or won't buy your stuff. So what are each of these things? Well, a misconception is usually just a myth or something that people believe to be true or not true about you or about the product or about the industry. Now, everyone knows what a question is, but ultimately that is just an unanswered doubt or curiosity, which is great, about how you might be able to help. That could be something as simple as how much does it cost? And then an objection is a reason for them not to do something, or a reason for them not to buy or not to download or not to book a call. Now, when you start taking sales calls, when you start interacting with your target market a lot more, you will find that there is always an unlimited amount of reasons why people won't do stuff. So it's really good to keep a list and then flip that and turn it into content, because what that does is push people over the edge. If you can answer the questions that they have, if you can handle or pre-handle the objections that they have, if you can solve or speak to any assumptions or misconceptions that they might have about you, the industry, or your business, you are going to win, and you're going to win big style. So the whole point of conversion content is to sit right at the bottom of the funnel and to get people to take that action because they now have no choice but to. So if we were to look at an example of someone that might just be selling an online course, all right? That's you. You're selling an online course on its own. And we want to look at misconceptions, questions, and objections. I'll give you an example for each. First and foremost, a misconception might be that someone in your target market or a number of people believe that online courses aren't as effective as face-to-face training, as an example. Is that always true? No. But it's a misconception they hold. So you want to create content about this to shift their beliefs. Ultimately, that's what the bottom of the funnel content and the middle of the funnel to some degree needs to do. Next, a question that someone might have before they buy an online course might be, what if I fall behind? All right, so you can create content and that could sit in your feed. It could sit on a sales page. It could sit as part of your DMs or YouTube strategy as well, where you answer that question. All right, what happens if you fall behind? Well, you don't need to worry because X, Y, Z. And you might have things in place within your product or within your course that stop people falling behind, or a support structure that helps them if they do. And finally, when it comes to objections, you might have just the money one, okay? £2,000 is a lot for a course. Well, it is, but it isn't. Because if that £2,000 unlocks you a new career, or if it helps you go on the date with your life partner in the end, or it helps you make $1 million, then £2,000 isn't really a lot. So this type of content works really, really well at the bottom of the funnel. However, I would always recommend doing it sparingly. Anyway, hopefully this has been helpful. If you want the planner, you can go and grab it for free below. If not, and you want to see more of how we can put content into action and how we can turn it into a full-blown strategy, you can watch this video here. I go into a lot more detail about content strategy as a whole and marketing to allow you to win clients on LinkedIn. So if you want to find out more, watch this video next.